Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe Ojejo.
No, my rice.
And we are back to do the second part of our Catch Up series, part 2, where we're looking at the bottom half of the CPL. Now, some things happened last week to the bottom half teams that we didn't want to talk about until the bottom half episode. And now some things have happened to the top half team after we've recorded the top half episode. Such is our luck here at Coast to Coast FC. I'm sure we'll find some time to talk about the deal that just recently happened, which was obviously Kwasi Poku going to Molenbeek in Belgium. We'll find some time in the episode to chat about that because that's obviously huge news. We were talking about the possibility of that happening in the last episode. Now that transfer has, finally come across the line, and now he's going to go to Belgium in the footsteps of Tristan Borges, hopefully with a little bit more success than when Borges went to second division in Belgium. But we'll go into that. For now, let's look at the bottom 4 teams and some of the stuff that's happened with them over the course of the last few weeks that we were on break. Remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube so you know exactly when we upload. But we're going to start off with the team that I cover in person, which is Vancouver FC. Now, Vancouver FC weren't really doing all that great when I left. And it feels like it's only gotten worse since. It's been a really tough time for Vancouver FC. The last 3 wins that they've had, I think of the last 12 games, have all been against Pacific, which on one hand is great because it's derby wins. But at the same time, Pacific A haven't been great lately. And also, it feels like they only kind of show up when it means something more to the fans and to the players. But week in, week out, it's been a real struggle, especially lately. So let's talk about first, Mike, maybe some things that are a little concerning. That's not really on the pitch, but off the pitch. It's that there hasn't been that great of attendance records as of late at Vancouver FC. And, of course, there's the whole issue of the cameras face the end where there is the least amount of people. There are a lot more people on the camera side, which is also where the press box side is. So it's not like it's not as bad as it might seem on TV, but still it is not great. And it's a little bit of concern that it hasn't really improved from last season's numbers.
No, that's the biggest issue, isn't it? I mean, you did sort of a great deep dive into Vancouver and lots of interviews in the off season, and I remember the bits of that they were discussing how to try and connect with the local community and try and build up their sort of young fan base, as well as different going into different parts of the city and trying to get some sort of momentum building and try and push on. The season started quite well, which you thought, okay, let's see, maybe people will start coming down, but it just looks like it's at the same point. And you would have hoped, especially as the decent weather kicked in, that people would be coming across and you see a few more people dotting around, a bit more movement around the stadium, even if it isn't for those benches we can't see, if there's people moving up around the pitch. But with the guys behind the goal, the Fraser Valley fanatics, that looks a lot more sparse around them. The people you've got those hardcore fans that are there each week, but that end as well seems a little much less than it was when things were going pretty well. So it's just it's really hard for them to try and draw that crowd, which we knew it would be, but they haven't. It does look like it's been really tough for them this year again to build on anything from last year.
Yeah. And again, I think obviously part of that is still the long-standing issues that they've had since their sort of inception, which is, being called Vancouver FC, but being based in Langley. Being based in Langley in general. And, some of those decisions that have happened there. I understand that they took a punt in trying to go and and appease or try to go and target, the people outside of Vancouver in the Fraser Valley, that there are a lot of people there with their own sort of sports team that because they, sometimes not everyone can go support the Whitecaps deep in downtown Vancouver. But it's, everyone kind of saw that maybe that wasn't the best idea, and now it's sort of still continuing to reap those not rewards, but more those drawbacks. But obviously the biggest selling point out of any sports team, regardless of the sport, is that you got to win at home to bring the fans in.
Yeah.
You have to win at home to bring the fans in, because at the beginning of the season, they were doing really well because of two reasons. One, they were winning. More importantly, they had a really good start to the season. And also they had sort of that feel-good factor of, look at all of the BC boys that are coming back, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it was the big homecoming party for a lot of that. It was that feel-good factor. A lot of people, friends and families of the players were going to see them, and a lot of people that had heard of these players, especially because a lot of, some of them were going through the Whitecaps Academy and stuff, and went through other MLS academies to be able to see them now in person play professionally at a local club. There's a lot of really good momentum going into the season with that. That at this point has now worn off.
Yeah.
And the only thing that can kind of maintain that fan retention and attention is good home performances. And that is a thing that has been lacking severely for Vancouver FC, because in this mid part of the season, they had so many home games. They had, I believe it was like 7 home games in their last 10. And except for the Pacific one, most recently, the Pacific one, they've drawn or lost all of them. Those were really great opportunities, obviously, to get points on the board and to climb it in the table.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a sec. But from more the kind of marketing point of view, those are games where you can show and prove to the fans that you're worth following, either driving out from other parts of the Fraser Valley, from as far as Abbotsford to all the way to Vancouver, like where I commute from. It's like either way, it's 40 minutes to an hour. You need to kind of show and prove both sort of in experience and exactly in off the pitch experience, your stadium experience, and on the pitch experience, that it's worth it. And so far this season, at least in the last 10, 12 games or so, they haven't really done that. I think that's obviously heavily impacted the attendance numbers as of late. And so now it's like, what are you going to do now? Like what's going to be the new angle? The BC boys thing has worn off. You're not winning at home. How can you turn this around from a whole club perspective? Because, a club like Vancouver FC and it's such a young, like league like the CPL, it's in a very vulnerable state where you don't start to get those fans, you don't got to get that investment, and you start worrying about, are we going to be another FC Edmonton, right?
Yeah.
You have to be like, you got to be realistic about these things. And so I hope for the sake of Vancouver FC and for the few fans that they do have, that they get better both on and off the pitch, so that this can be a more sustainable club, whether that means potentially relocating again, whether that means rebranding. I don't know. We've seen York United do that a couple of times. And so I feel like maybe that might be the direction that they need to do. But let's focus on the pitch stuff.
Yeah.
Because I wrote recently in the for Northern Tribune a pretty scathing article on Vancouver FC in their latest loss against Forge FC. I don't think I intended to go that hard, but it was pretty frustrating to watch that game against Forge and just in general in their form of late, because there's a lot of things going wrong that have been going wrong for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and it feels like nothing's been really done to fix them. You see the opening goal against Forge, where the 4 minutes in, Rocco Romeo has a horrible mistake. Just these defensive mistakes, these lapses. It's not a coincidence. It's a pattern. It's continuously a pattern with them. and it's making it really difficult for them to gain any momentum in the match, because even if they are winning, or if they are in the ascendancy as they were, in the second half after they got back on level terms, they looked like they were the side that was going to go and win it. A defensive mistake gives Forge the winner late on, and then all of that effort was for nothing.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue with them. There just seems to be a lack of, whether it's a lack of belief in what they're doing or a nervousness in what they're doing. And there's just, there's just absolutely, it just doesn't look like there's the confidence in what they're being asked to do that they can do it amongst themselves. I think that's my personal opinion. Maybe others will look at it and think, okay, well, maybe they're asked to do a lot, but they're asked to do too much and they're trying to do it. I just don't think they have the confidence in it. I think they've got quality in this team, but there just seems to be too much panic around what they're doing. I think more than it is just not paying attention. I think they are focused and they are doing things, but they're almost playing with the thought in the back of their mind. Oh God, I could make a mistake at any moment.
Yeah. And I think that comes a little bit of the fact that sometimes when a ball comes to a player, they don't really know what to do. And you can see that on the pitch. And I think in this game against Forge, it was the most clear that I've ever seen it. Just the stark contrast between Forge. Every time they get the ball, every player knows what they need to do. Every player understands what their role is in that moment, where the other players are going, the positions that they're taking up, the spaces that they are creating and occupying. Forge were playing, even though they were barely out of second gear, they were still playing like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
You look at Vancouver FC, they get the ball in really good positions because Forge were giving the ball away, and they just panicked. They just lost the plot. They just got too excited. And it felt like there really wasn't a game plan, at least to the level and depth as the one that you see from Forge. Not every team has to play like Forge, but you see other teams in the league that played this, different from Forge, like Ottawa, like York United, but they still have a clear identity that you can see a style of play and understand, okay, if the players understand what the style of play is, then in moments of contention, in moments of transition, they'll know at least the basic ideas of what they need to do. It doesn't feel like this Vancouver side has it. I've been mentioning it for a while in my own articles, and I've been just seeing it for a while, that I still don't know what the identity of this team is. And I know some people might think that I'm getting too deep and to be like, not every team has to have a deep philosophical identity. But every team does have to have a sort of style of play, where you could think of if I think about this team, I know how they're going to play for the most part. They'll switch it up, obviously.
They all need to. You need to look at the players and think they will need to know what each other's doing, whereas Vancouver don't. Even in the most basic sense of having a style of play, you all need to know what you're trying to do as a group.
Exactly, and it feels like there's a lot of times where they don't, or even if they do, they don't know how to execute it. Sometimes they have a wayward pass, a bad touch. The pass comes just behind or just too in front. There's these little things that show that they're still sort of rusty when they shouldn't be, because we're almost at the tail end of the season. We're in the last 10 games of the season now, and it's quite concerning from my point of view, this kind of just lack of identity and style of play, especially when you look, like you mentioned, at the players. They have too good of a squad to not make the playoffs. Just cut and dry, especially now after this trade with Amends Salouf coming in. You have a front four of Salouf, Kantav, Batar, and Alejandro Diaz. That's a top four minimum forward line right there, knowing what they all can do on their day at the best of times.
Yeah, I guess the issue is they're not always on their day.
That's the thing. They're not always on their day. And the question is why? Why aren't they always on their day? And why are they so consistently inconsistent? That's the biggest question. And so that kind of goes with the whole elephant of the room, that you have to kind of look, well, if the players are good, but they're not playing well, then who is it on? You kind of have to look towards the coach.
Yeah, and it's usually cheaper to change a coach than it is an entire
An
squad of
entire
players.
squad. Exactly. That's usually, as people who watch football in the top 5 leagues completely understand that. But I
Yeah,
do think that sometimes that can be just kind of like a knee-jerk reaction, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But I do feel like with Afshin, him and the management don't have the excuse anymore of, oh, we're a young team, we're a project that was too early, we have young players that don't really know how to play any, like, they're not at the standard. No, they have really good players, tried and tested players with a ton of experience, and you have basically all the tools to succeed. Why are they not succeeding? That's the questions that have to be asked of Afshin
yeah,
Gapi and of the management. And I'm in the in the pre-match press conference and the post-match press conference. You hear some of the comments that Afshin's making. It does feel like there's some sort of divide between himself and the players, where I don't necessarily think like he's somebody that is I respect him greatly. He's
mm,
someone that likes to make excuses a lot. On the on the goal, the opening goal from Forge, he was talking about a boot. Rocco Romeo had a tear in his boot that he wanted to change, and apparently, I mean that. I'm not saying it didn't. It might have not impacted
yeah,
Romeo's play, but I
yeah,
don't. I think that'd be very charitable to
very
say that
minor.
was
Yeah,
the whole reason why Rocco had that terrible pass straight into the path of Jordan Hamilton.
mm,
Um, but it just feels like he sometimes he says things like, you know, last year he's talked about basically the team being amateurish. This
mm,
year he and the last press conference he mentioned that the mistakes that the team is making is youth level mistakes, so
yeah,
basically like schoolboy mistakes. And to me it feels like that's kind of like you're obviously, your job isn't to endear yourself to the players, but it feels like he's creating a slight divide. And you look at some of the things that have happened across the season, these rumors, these whispers about bust ups and between players, and that's why players have left. you know uh, Even the most recent one with Moses Dyers for Amon Saloof. How does Moses Dyer, who is such a good striker for them at the beginning of the season, get traded off
yeah,
within one season? You got to feel like there was something behind the scenes. I'm not sure, obviously, but these are just things that are rumors and that are whispers that are going around. So I feel like with Afshin Gapi's position right now as a head coach, there is some serious concerns because of the performances, but also because of the relationships that he has with his players.
mm,
Because we both know that when a coach loses the locker room, the writing's on the wall. It's a matter of time.
yeah,
And it doesn't really feel like, for me, and maybe you have a different viewpoint, it doesn't really feel like the players are really playing for him anymore. They're sort of playing for themselves and for the fans and for other reasons, and they're not quite as aligned, and that's what's translating on the pitch.
yeah. No, I can quite comfortably see this being his last season, unless something dramatic changes. Don't think they'll make a change financially during the season.
Mm.
They're in the playoff spots at the moment. But yeah, if unless something dramatic changes, I can't see Afshin staying next year. I think the job's just not working out as the two parties would have wanted.
Yeah. And you can see from one point, like what he's done to try to develop some of the young players like TJ Tahid and James Cameron. And now this year, Grady McDonald. Grady had a fantastic little cameo in
Mm.
the game against Forge. He had like a 60-yard sprint to go to try to attack, and he got a nice applause out of it as well. But outside of that, you're still looking at a team that wants to succeed. They're not just there to develop youth. They're also there to succeed. They also need to win games. They also want to be in the playoffs. They also want to challenge for the championships. They're not at that point right now. And I think you were correct that they financially, especially because I can only imagine Afshin is a coach that comes with a lot of credibility and prestige. I can only imagine what his severance would look like if they decide to get rid of him in the mid-season. I don't think that will necessarily be the case, though. you look at what York United did with Martin Nash, and you think, well, maybe that is what is needed, but I don't think so. I think it's really on him and the team to be able to turn things around, because now Valor's like biting at their heels, and as I mentioned before, the squad's way too good to not make the playoffs, and I don't want to see a mutiny happen in Vancouver. But if Afshin and players don't become aligned and kind of maybe make some compromises and get back on the same page, this could be a really tough end of the season for Vancouver FC. And with what already we talked about before, of the attendance and all of the stuff behind the scenes, that could be that could have greater repercussions moving forward for the club. So I think it really is sort of critical at this point in time, with 10 games to go, for Afshin and his team to turn things around, because there's too much at stake, in my opinion, for this to just keep going as there is.
Yeah, definitely. But like you say there, they have got a really good squad. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I don't see many games where they're not scoring. So at least, I mean,
that's true.
We've gone over quite rightly a lot of the issues, but they have got that ability to keep scoring goals, and some of these players may step up. As a group, they might lead themselves. Things might get better coaching wise in this relationship that possibly isn't at its best. So when you compare those three sides below them, and there's definitely one, and there's at least two who are struggling down that end of the pitch in comparison, which could keep them up in that playoff spot come the end of the year.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, like they do have a really good squad. They have really good depth. We saw in that Forge game most recently of, Elijah Ba coming on and scoring that goal, being put at the 10 position, even though he was a right back or a right winger. Still, Afshin loves to play players in random positions.
Yeah,
It seems to have worked out in that moment. They have quality. I mean, you look at the fact that David Norman Jr., who was winning championships in Europe, wasn't even dressed. You see Zach Verhoeven, who is a great impact player. We've seen him be a great impact player in the league, not dressed. They have quality to spare, it seems, right now. They have now Amends Aloof, who is such a good player, and like he can be that difference maker, that spark that I feel like was what was missing for Vancouver FC. So I think they benefited greatly from this trade for between Pacific and themselves. Of the Dyer for Saloof trade, I think they'll benefit from it, and we'll talk about Pacific, how much they might benefit from Moses Dyer being in the squad too. So they do still have a lot of things going for them. I think that's what makes it even more frustrating to watch from a personal point of view, that they're struggling so much, and that's why more and more it seems evident that the issues are not in one or two players or one and two bad performances, but the overall patterns that are stemming from one place. And that for me is the coaching. So we'll see what happens moving forward with Vancouver FC. Hopefully for myself, because I do have to commute there all the time, they get a little bit better so I can go and enjoy the games a little bit more, but also for the fans and for the players themselves, that they can pick this up. But yeah, we'll see what happens with them, because they're one to definitely keep an eye on with everything going around the league right now. But let's move on from me yapping a lot about a team to now you yapping a lot about one team. We're going to move on to probably we were talking about York United be the most informed team at the top of the table. Obviously, we cursed it because then they went and lost.
Yeah.
Like many things that we cursed in the last episode, because we were talking about Atletico Ottawa having struggles, and they won.
Made easy work.
Yeah, exactly. Just wait until we say something and then go and do the opposite. And that seems to be the key for a lot of teams. But we were talking about York United be the most informed team in the top half. Now let's talk about the most informed team in the bottom half, which is Valour FC, your boys. They are turning things around greatly. Just looking at the last few matches since we've taken the break, in their last 5 matches, they have won 3, drawn 1, and only lost 1 game. And that was against
Mm.
York United at home. So you
Yeah.
can sort of forgive them. But 2 really big results against Forge and against Halifax, and I guess
Yeah.
the away win against Pacific as well. So 3,
Really.
you
Yeah.
could say 3 really big results.
Mm.
Phil Dos Santos has really changed things around for Valor, and they
Yeah.
just are flying up the table. Mike, what led to this? What happened?
I really don't know what to say without jinxing it now.
Yeah, it's true. Just knock on wood a bunch.
But they seem to be embracing being that unfancied side. They're not. It's not like you see them making sweeping changes and trying to change the like complete identity. There's been a few personnel changes. Umla has been brilliant in the midfield there since bringing him in. And when you've got Facineri back in, I think has helped alongside Mordekudis to sort of shore up that sort of central defensive area a bit. Razura Sao has been fantastic when he gets on the ball. At times, he's been really fun to watch, I found. And they've gone to this almost 4-4-2 sort of style, and it's just suited them. Like that back three that they started with at the beginning of the year, the midfield was weak, the defense was too slow, there was massive gaps in between, and teams were just finding areas to go, and they were really struggling. And now Valor are defending really well, committedly, but they've got players getting forward in all sorts of areas. The fullbacks have been brilliant in getting involved. Antonoglu, like consistently with his delivery. Alacon's had some good performances out on the right side there, but getting Hundle and Swibble working well together has been key. Knowing that you've got Faria and Razurazao or whoever is going to play on in those midfield areas, really sort of supporting them and making themselves quite adventurous when they get the ball. They could be quite resolute and working hard, and yet they've got mistakes in them. And I really don't have a whole lot of faith in Viscosi most of the time. But as a group, they're working really hard, but then they're just bombing forward. It's a really sort of dedicated, no frills sometimes kind of football. But the quality on the ball sometimes that then picks it up, and like it is kind of old-fashioned 4-4-2 sometimes. But it's just they found a way that works best for this group of players, rather than trying to set up a system and trying to shove those players into it.
Yeah, I won't make the joke about 4-4-2 because it involves cussing, and we will not cuss.
Yeah.
But it does seem like the 4-4-2, just back to basics, seems to have really worked well for Valor. And what I have been pleasantly surprised about is how clinical they've been in the last few weeks. Because it's not like they've had a lot of chances to score from.
That's it. Yeah.
But they've managed to still score a decent number of them. I mean, I think the game against Forge that they won a couple of weeks ago, they had 2 shots on target, and both of them were the goals that they needed to win.
Yeah.
And they were just clinical. This game against the Wanderers, I mean, they had that goal line save. Dan Nimick made a goal line save to deny Reserve Sao a goal. But aside from that, they had a couple of other, maybe Sean Hundle had a decent chance towards the end of the game. But really, it was those chances that they had before, when Nimick unfortunately headed into his own goal, and then Jordy Swibble just managed to sneak by underneath Jan Filian. They're proving to be more clinical, actually taking the chances and converting the few chances that are going their way. And obviously goals give you confidence individually and as a team, but seeing them be a bit more clinical, I think, has really turned things around. And just, that midfield has gotten so much stronger. Mla has been so impressive for them. Obviously, we knew how good he was in the Canadian Championship for CS Saint Laurent, but he's come into this Valor side and has really made a good pairing alongside Dante Campbell as well. Campbell, who's more consistently, still sometimes has an odd game here or there at wingback, but more consistently is in the midfield and where he's supposed to be playing. And that duo of themselves, of Mla and Campbell, has been really strong for Valor. And listen, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Valor have been a lot better since Chansopoulos has been dropped
Exactly.
from
Yeah.
from the defensive line.
Yeah.
we talked about it a lot at the beginning
Yeah.
of the season about the mistakes he was making, how he couldn't catch a break. I'm
Mm.
glad that now it's Mortakudis coming in and having more of a stable presence in that Valor lineup alongside Facineri. So it seems like it's a lot better now defensively
Yeah.
from Forge, but it's still there's still some elements of weakness in the goalkeeping and the defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Viscosi's erratic. You can't trust him. I think like you can't sit there and think there's a reliable goalkeeper. He'll pull off some big saves at times, but it's all very erratic. And they're under pressure a lot, and then they're doing really well to keep getting these results, but they are under pressure a lot. They don't hold on to the ball for ages. Like they hit on the break, and they attack with width where they can, and like great long balls through and through balls, and trying to pick up little spots in between lines. But it's fast attacking play, and which is why the number of chances are limited, because obviously they're not every time they get the ball, they're not taking a shot. So the other team does get a lot of opportunities to try and break them down. They're doing well to limit it, but that's the big concern about this, like their style of play and the players they've got, because Chansopoulos has to come in for a few games. If Viscosi has one of his crazy matches, if things don't quite click between Lara and Campbell, or like rotations need to be made, it can be quite difficult for them.
Yeah, it is kind of a thing where things are working well right now, but it feels like it's on thin form.
Yeah.
It one or two things going wrong, and you could tumble back down into how they were playing.
Yeah, you
before.
could hit a run of bad results. So yeah, it doesn't look like a completely stable development, but it's a very fun one to see.
No, yeah, and I really like that a lot of players have been stepping up for them recently. You know, I mean, Temi Atanoglu was one of the bright spots for them all season, and he's been continuing that. He got a goal a couple of weeks ago, I think it was
Yeah,
against Pacific, where he cut in from the left and scored on his right. You see Sean Hundle also like finally starting to come a little good towards
yeah,
at the end of this season. I think he's got 3 goals and 2 assists now.
yeah, yeah.
Somebody who had a really, really quiet start to the season now starting to kind of come into a little bit more. And obviously the main man on Valor right now of Swivel,
Yeah,
because he's been really since the beginning, but especially lately has been so good for them. And that's I think he sort of led by example on what I was talking about being clinical, because
yeah,
he doesn't get the easiest of chances to score, but he still manages to score them. And I think that's one of the things that for Valor, they needed someone to do that, because again, you look at their quality compared to quality of other teams, it is not quite there. So they need to be punchy. They need to kind of have those smash and grab wins, and to be able to do
yeah,
that you need to be clinical, and finally they have someone who is clinical and Swivel, and just being so impressive. And same thing with Rezu Sao. He's been so good for them as well in the middle of the pitch, and just creatively he's hit the little jinx that he has, the ability of passing play
yeah.
that he has. Like a lot of
Really,
players have been stepping up for Valor, and it's must be such a breath of fresh air for Phil Dos Santos to actually have these players
yeah,
stepping up and being like, I'm the one who's going to take charge of
yeah,
this game
exactly.
and change it for us.
And it's a huge game this weekend against Vancouver. So there's two teams with very different directions at the moment in form. So yeah, that'll be a huge one this weekend. So definitely one to try and tune into.
Especially, that's going to be a 6-pointer, classic 6-pointer between the two. Valor win that, then they take the place of Vancouver FC.
Yeah.
And you actually look at the team form between the two of them. I'm looking at it right now in FootMob, and it's the exact opposite. Valor have won 3 of the last 4, while Vancouver have lost 3 of the last 4. And the one game that they've done the opposite was in the same match week.
No,
So,
really.
yeah, So what I'm seeing is that this is not going to be a draw. There's going to be a winner. And there's going to be a loser. But yeah, a fantastic match in that one. And it's going to be super interesting to see how both teams sort of respond to their recent form and knowing what's at stake. So from a Valour point of view, it seems like you're coming into this in the perfect form, having has won 3 out of the last 4 games. So we'll see if they can continue to build that momentum moving forward.
It's good to see the watching the games. It's good to see like the crowd feels a lot bigger, more engaged in the team than it was last year for the entire year. I mean, you could watch a game last year and you could hear individual fans shouting, whereas now there's a group of like it feels like a crowd now. So, and that's great to see. Like, it's really, really good to see them getting down and supporting the team.
Yeah, and that's huge for them because that was obviously something that was a bit of a concern for us and many people around the league towards last season is the sustainability of Valour. So it's great to see that after the stadium changes, after having to wait so long for them to have a home game at the beginning of the season, now they're starting to get some momentum and coincidentally getting some more, or maybe not coincidentally, maybe they go hand in hand. Wink, wink, Vancouver FC. They get to have more crowds and a better feeling around the stadium. So we'll see if that continues for them in the weeks to come. Now let's go and talk about another BC team that started the season really high, but just like Vancouver FC has been down in the dumps as of late. It is Victoria's own Pacific FC. Now, if watching Vancouver has been a struggle lately, I can only imagine what it must be as a Pacific fan for watching Pacific FC, because I like what you wrote here, and I would love for you to elaborate on. It's like watching Groundhog Day. Please elaborate and explain.
It's just every match is exactly the same. It feels like I've done this. We've done this. Like week on week on week. There's no change. Like, you can put the players in different positions and the same thing's happening. Like, it's just repetitive, and it's the only difference you see is the more empty seats. Like, Pacific fans have had it so good, and it's just been getting slowly worse. And this year, like I don't know, maybe a harsher person than me may say that there's some fickle fans out there who only turn up when they're winning, but we're spoiled slightly watching. But it does, it's, but at the same time, you're spending a decent amount of money to see the same thing each week. That would drive you nuts.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, you look at their form in their last 9 matches; they only have 1 win and 5 losses in their last 6. So they are free falling right now compared to where they were earlier in the season. And as you mentioned, even though James Merriman is trying to find new players, trying to find new sort of connections, trying to find new pairings and new ways of going about it, it's the same issues time and time again. And we can see how much it's frustrating for him, because you only got to watch that press conference that he had after the Salishi Derby defeat, where he was heated in that press room. And I know that press room in at Vancouver FC. It's basically the size of a high school changing room. It is not big. So when you are angry in there, everyone can not only see it but feel it. And you could tell that he was incensed at his team, that they just couldn't get anything across the line, that just consistently having these poor performances. And it feels like all of the work that they do in training, they show up to the game and they forget it all. They they go into it like they have amnesia, and they're playing together for the first time, having not trained for the past week. It's genuinely incredulous to watch, especially you look at some of the things that they've had with injuries. Obviously, the loss of Ali and Dum at the beginning of the season, that was huge, because when he was in the side, they were what, 4, 5, 6 games without conceding a goal.
Yeah,
he made such a huge
and he
difference.
was creating chances as well.
Yeah, he was doing marauding runs forward and everything. His loss is obviously massive. It's not like they don't have some reasons to sort of explain their poor form, but for me, it's still not enough reasons to explain how badly they've been playing, because
No.
there's been these concerns since the beginning of the season, and since, I'll be honest, since before the beginning of the season, for years, about goal scoring,
Yeah. Yeah, they've
and it's
always
only
struggled.
continued
Mm.
this season.
Yeah, it's the way, like you say, yeah, you can rotate players, you can make little tweaks to the system, but they're not composed in front of goal, and it's not that they don't create chances usually. They get into the final third and they just don't hit the target. Like, so often they just don't hit the target. And there's players out there on plenty of other teams. We just talked about Geordie Swivel. He'll get one chance. I don't think he's a great link-up player as a forward, but if you give it to him in the final third, he'll take a touch or two and he'll shoot, or he'll shoot first time, and it will go on target more often than not. It may not go in every time, but he knows where the goal is. Whereas the players in Pacific just don't seem to, they can't find it. And that's a big issue. It's not just the quality of the finishing. A lot of the time they're snapping at the ball, but it's the movement to get in the box. There's little conviction when it comes to game day, and that needs a hell of a lot of work. Because, yeah, like you say, even last season when they got into the playoffs and they made their way through, like past Halifax, the games were it was 1-0s or 1-0s. Like, they were never threatening enough in the final third, and it's just continued.
Yeah, and you look at the last few games that they've had, and the Ottawa one. I watched that game live, and I watched that opening half an hour, and it was genuinely just mind-boggling the way that
Yeah,
Pacific FC completely capitulated in that opening half an
yeah,
hour against Ottawa. Haven't been in great form, but they
no,
looked like they were back to their very best in the opening half hour, just because Pacific FC allowed them to. They allowed themselves to get steamrolled, and that's one of the patterns that I've seen in Pacific as of late. Is just they seem so passive at times, both in possession and out of possession. They seem so passive. They seem so soft. It doesn't feel like they have that grit, that determination. They're just sometimes it just feels like the game goes by them. And then they look around after conceding a goal and they're all frustrated, but it's not like it's one particular person's fault. It's just the whole mentality of the team right now is is, is in that mode. There are just too many periods of inconsistency, whether it's periods of games or periods in a game. They're just struggling to meet the pace of any given moment with the same
mm,
intensity as the other teams that they're facing. And like afterwards, when they recovered from the that half an hour, they started to play some better football. But at that point, the damage had been done. Ottawa, all they needed to do was defend. And Pacific, when their goal scoring form, I mean, they've scored 14 goals all season. 14 goals. That's it. All season. We're in match week 19, going into match week 20.
and
They've scored 14 goals. Even Halifax, who have been, we'll get to them in really poor form throughout the season, have scored 23.
yeah,
Almost a full 10 more than you.
mm,
It's ridiculous. It's like that's the biggest thing. They go down a goal, and the other team feels confident that they won't score just because they haven't been able to. And you look at players like Dario Zanata. He came in as this player that can play in the central areas and out wide, and he can be clinical. Hasn't scored a goal for the club yet. You see,
no,
Rion Moore was supposed to be this big number 9. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he has less goals than Easton Ngaro did last season
yeah, I think so.
so far
Yeah,
this
without
season.
checking, yeah, but yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It hasn't been the
Yeah,
upgrade that people have been
it's
hoping for.
yeah, and it just cements the fact that it doesn't matter who you put in there at the moment. It's the way this team is set up, the confidence, and what they do in the final third. Like, there's deeper issues than just bringing in a new player.
Exactly. And then that's the thing that's really confusing, is that it's not any given player, it's not any given
Mm.
necessarily formation, it's something bigger. And I don't know if it's just habit, but I kind of go through the same mental calculations as I did with Vancouver FC, now with Pacific, where it's like, well, who does that fall upon? James Merriman, in a sense.
Yeah, I think he's. There seem to be some changes in his coaching team over the off season, but they need to think about their next hire for a attack-minded coach to join this team to help them out and get some work done, like ready for next year. Like that is a huge problem, and they need to find someone else who can bring some fresh ideas into that. Because he got this huge long contract, he's going to be here. I can't imagine Pacific are going to give up on him. Defensively, they're often doing very well.
Second best defensive record in the league, exactly. Only 20 goals conceded.
So he's got these qualities, but there's just unfortunately, the one key thing that is so glaringly obviously not working is the one thing you really need. So yeah,
it's like that saying. It's like, goals win you games, but defense wins you championships.
Yeah,
you still need goals.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can have a great defense. You still need the goals to win the games. So,
yeah, you need to to be at least at 1 goal a game.
At least, yeah, you can't win a game unless you score.
But yeah, I can imagine they're looking out, and they'll look out for some help in the back office, and things will change there in what they'll do to try and work on like how they can get these players, how they can get this squad changed in that role. There'll be some changes to players. I think like they said their midfield isn't attack minded enough. Like the whole midfield, like there's those central midfield players. Stephen Yates has been the one that's been pushed forward more, but otherwise, these are sixes, maybe the odd eight. There's no one that is a true sort of like box-to-box midfielder that's got quality in the final third. They don't have that. It's like Sean Young will work hard, but he's not the same player without Manny Aparicio. And I know it's like really lazy to say, but Manny Aparicio could do that, get up and down and tables. He's not the only one that can do that. You like as someone, it's not easy to replace, but you've got to keep working to try and find someone who can do those sorts of things. And Stephen Yates isn't quite the same. And if you're going to change things up, then that knocks on to these other roles. Like, so you can't, if Stephen Yates is slightly different to Aparicio, then you can't just play the exact same style on the wings and just in the forward. Like there's got to be this knock on of little adaptations, which doesn't seem to have. They just haven't found the right. They still haven't found that right blend.
Yeah, and it's obviously a concern now because of playoffs. It seems, last year Pacific FC just about got into the playoff spots.
Yeah.
This year, it doesn't look like they're favorites to get the playoffs at all. Really, no. They look like they're probably going to be fighting with Halifax for the bottom 2 places in the league. I mean, they do have 4 points ahead of Halifax right now, playing the same amount of games, and they still have a game in hand over Valour, so they could be up there in the spots, fighting for Vancouver FC mathematically.
Mathematically, yeah.
But that's the thing, it's just mathematically on form and in the way that they're playing. I view Pacific FC and Halifax more alike than I view Pacific FC and Valour. I feel like out of all 4 of these teams that are fighting for this last place, because there's quite a big gap now between 4th and 5th. Valour is probably the favorite. Maybe Vancouver FC if they get their stuff together. But those are basically the 2 favorites. I don't really put Pacific in that picture, and it's because of how mentally soft they are and how snake bitten. I feel like is not even a strong enough word meant to describe their situation and goal scoring.
Yeah, that's completely right. If you agree with what you're saying there. You can watch Vancouver and you can watch Valour. They'll lose a couple of games. They'll win a couple of games. They'll go on a little run of defeats. They'll bounce back. They'll get a few wins. They'll pick up some points. You can't see that with the other 2 teams. And we'll go on to Halifax in a bit, but you can't just go, oh yeah, well they might lose this one, but they'll get a point. They'll get a win here maybe. You can't do that with Pacific. Like at the moment, you can't confidently say they're going to win.
No. And that's the thing that I feel like is I agree that I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure on James Merriman in terms of his job security, but
No.
there's still going to be a lot of pressure on James Merriman to turn this around
Mm.
because again, this is far different than the situation he was in, at the beginning of last season,
Yeah.
where everything was going great and you had a lot of great players and you had so much depth and all that. Now he really has to show sort of his mettle, is to
Mm.
prove himself as a top Canadian coach to get his team out of this rut and to be able to make do with what you have. Because in the end, a lot of these signings, all of these signings, you've been around for long enough that pretty much I think all of these signings have happened under his reign. All of these players that he has have
Yeah.
been signed when he was coach. So they're all yours. You need to make the best out
Mm.
of the situation that you've sort of maybe not created, but at least have had a hand in and been sort of dealt with
Yeah.
to try to get out of it because you're not long gone. There's no chance for you to collect playoffs, but huge wholesale changes need to happen. And the question is, can they happen soon enough for it to
Mm.
impact the season? I'm not quite confident. I do agree with you that I think that once the season's over, there's going to be a lot of changes on the player front and maybe on the staff front and maybe even in terms of identity and the tactics. I think James Merriman has to do a lot of soul searching
Yeah.
after the season if it continues the way that they're going. But yeah, I just don't know if it might come too little too late for
Yeah.
them in terms of this season, especially in the form that the other teams above them are in.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's tough to see. It's tough to see, especially if you're a Pacific fan. It's tough to see them getting any better than they are already
Mm.
at. Um, but from one kind of struggling team to another, let's move on to the fourth and final team of the episode and the last place team in the CPL right now. I can't believe it. It's the Halifax Wanderers. I would like to point out, embarrassingly, the team that I pipped to win the playoffs at the beginning of the season,
Yeah.
dead last in the table. Don't look for my endorsement because clearly it's the kiss of death. Um, but yes, Halifax Wanderers, they are, after having some good mid-season form in June and sort of July a bit, the last three matches have really kind of done away with some of the good work that they have
Mm.
because they are 4 points off of Pacific and Valor. Again, same with Pacific, same as Pacific situation. They do have a game in hand
Mm.
on Valor, so they could be, if they win their game in hand, only 1 point behind Valor, and therefore 4 points behind Vancouver FC. So it's not like they're, again, long gone, no chance.
Mm.
But similar to Pacific situation, maybe for me personally, it's not as bad as
No.
Pacific situation. But similar to Pacific situation, it doesn't really look like right now they're a squad that can get the job done and rise up the table. I am more willing to be proven wrong in this one than Pacific. I feel like they do have some quality enough, and they've shown enough in throughout, especially in the sort of the latter half of the season, to show that they might be able to pull off an upset and rise up the table, especially when you look at the schedule that they have. That's one of the things that they do have going for them, is that in the last 10 games that they have, 6 of them are at home.
Yeah.
And at home, they've actually been decent. They've won a bunch of games, they've drawn a bunch of games. They haven't lost at home at Wanderers grounds since late May against Valor. So that's one thing that is going for them over, like, let's say Pacific. But still, it just feels like because of their season, the way that they started the season, it's just been going through not revolution through revolution, but like small change through small change through small change through small
Yeah.
change. And it just be like it feels like they don't have stability, similar to Vancouver FC, but maybe to an even deeper level
Mm.
than Vancouver FC. Just a lack of stability in the squad right now, and that has to do also with some injuries.
Yeah, injuries is part, but yeah, like you say, one of my favourite words, tinkering, has been happening all the time this year. Kicking off the year with the back three, it wasn't working for a while, and I think Patrice Geyser must have been battling with that. Do I go back now, or will that make me look weak on my thoughts? And I think he's gone backwards and forwards on it. Eventually, if I remember rightly, he went back to a back four before Julian Dunn's injury. So he had made that decision to, and we're getting big Thiago Coimbra up front again. And the stuff happened and the changes were made, but I feel like I completely agree with you that I'm more confident on them than I am Pacific, and I would imagine them catching Pacific because I feel like they're going back a little bit to what they were last year, and it's just taking them a little bit of time to get over the confidence issues and the trying to rebuild that form and that fluidity that they had last year. I can see them improving, especially at home, obviously. Whether they'll get the playoffs, I don't know. I don't know if it's a bit too late that they're starting to show signs that they can get forward again, because they've still got these issues at the back. There's still mistakes being made. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they'll pick up a few more points, especially at home. And we'll have to just people in Nova Scotia will have to sit there eagerly wondering if it's going to be too little, too late, or just in time.
Yeah. I mean, that it'll be huge for them. They'll have to. I think they will obviously understand, maybe even more than us, how much it matters for them to go and support this team now in these last 10 games. Given that more than 50% of their remaining games are at home, to really push this side to get results so they can climb back up the table and be able to fight for those playoff spots. But it does feel like it will take that sort of Herculean effort from them at home to get them back in the playoffs, because it feels like you mentioned just a little like too little too late. And now with the pressures on, you need to sort of prove yourself. And we know what Patrice Geyser is all about. We know how he will demand that, not even expect that, demand that of his team in these last 10 matches. But I just don't know if they'll be able to pull it off. And maybe it will be a circumstance of good timing, in that they're starting to come into maybe a little bit of better form, if they can get into better form now, going with these more home games, while other teams are struggling, like Pacific, like Vancouver. If they can just do a little bit better than Valour, maybe they can sneak in on the final day or the final 2 days into that 5th position. But it's gonna take, like I mentioned, a Herculean effort with a lot of things going your way for that to actually be accomplished in the last 10 games. And now that they've gone back to, I mean, you look at the team itself, and bar a couple of players, it's 2023 HFX. Literally, in the players, majority of the players, and in the style and everything, it's almost, taking a step back makes it seem like it's bad, but in this case, taking a step back is sort of what they needed to be able to play. That back four essentially is what it was last season for the most part, with for Zachary Fernandez, Dan Nimick, Timateo, Kale Lowry. I know that Jefferson Alphonse has come in as well.
They need those young youth minutes, don't they?
Exactly. They know that they need those in the 21 minutes, but like the starting back four is the same back four from last season.
Exactly.
You see the midfield, it's still like Aiden Daniels and Caligari and Farron. The best thing that's happened to them, though, recently is having acquired Sean Rea, because Sean Rea coming back into the league and playing for them has been superb. I've been really impressed with his play, even if he hasn't been able to, get the goals or the assists, the flashes that he's shown.
That's the one thing, because I really like Sean Rea. I think he's a fantastic player, and I'm really excited for this team. But he just is so desperate to get that goal that sometimes he's making the wrong decision. Like, well, I just feel like once he gets that one goal, things will start flowing a bit better. But he's just so obsessed, I think, with getting this first goal.
Exactly. And I feel like, once he and that's the thing. This is him not at his best. I feel like if he can get it into his best really soon, because they need it, he can be a huge turning point for Halifax as well, because we know the talent that he has from his time years prior in the league. So they they have some things that are going pretty well for them in terms of the player personnel and the fact that they have a player to add to it. But the fact that they're having to go back to 2023 again shows how much they might have missed the ball in terms of their recruitment. In the summer this past season, because you look at the wholesale changes that they made when Patrice Geyser came in, and it was fantastic because look how well they they hit the nail on the head in that one. But then this summer, people like to say sophomore slump. I don't even know if it's a sophomore slump in terms of the team in itself. It felt like in recruitment had a massive
terrible
sophomore slump. I mean, the biggest one was Christian Valevsky.
He's
oh
gone
my
already,
goodness, he's gone, and I don't know what happened, because he was playing at USL level, great experience. He scored a bunch, maybe not as much as maybe you'd like, but still, he's a striker. He scores goals. He came in, had some injury issues, never really hit the ground running. I don't think ever really gelled with the team, and then just quietly snuck out the back door without having made one career goal. It's just
disappointing. The thing is while we were talking, I was just finding it funny how I think, in my head, we're saying James Merriman, second bottom of the league right now, we think he's fine. Afshin Gotby in the playoffs, think he's worried. Patrice Geyser have the same thing. I think he's fine in his role. I think he's the right man for this job. I just think he's going to have to really learn from this season's recruitment about what he's done, about where he wants to take this team, and how, because I think he's just tried a little bit too much. Trying to change too much to not be caught out. I think he's sort of overdone it somewhat. There's just been a few little changes I've seen on some of the chatter online that I think, I do agree. I just think some of these players who are decent players haven't really fit. Like Jeremy Gagnon-Lapare, I haven't been that impressed with him in this team. I think he struggled somewhat to keep going with what he's doing in the squad. I think so. The loss of Mo Omar has been tough, and I mean the fact that he's not really playing much down the USL even more frustrating. And Valevsky's just so different. He was just so different to what was working up front for them last year with players like Coimbra, and it was fitting in with other players that were struggling to score goals. That sort of profile of centre forward, and it's just a bit disappointing to see. A few other sort of attacking midfielders we've seen, was it Provo, and come in and out, and they haven't really affected the team particularly well. There's a lot to learn, but I think he's a manager that you can really back, I think, to really learn from those mistakes and give him that chance to go again.
And I think that's what they're going to need. Even if they can salvage it, fantastic. If they don't, I don't think it really changes all that much for Halifax Wanderers. It just really kind of becomes a reality check season for them, being like, we had a great first season on the guys, we overperformed. Now this season has sort of shown some of the gaps that they have that we didn't see because of how great it was in the first season, both on the pitch and off the pitch. And I think it's a great lesson, and easy to say after the fact, but a great lesson for them to understand that what direction they need to take, and maybe not try to make too drastic of changes so early on in the lifespan of this tenure under Patrice Geyser. And hopefully recruitment is a little bit better in the off season, but there's still 10 games left for Halifax, and they need all the bit of support that they can to be able to turn it around. Because you look at some of the home games, and it's tough games. The next game is against Atletico Ottawa at home. Then it's York United at home, and then it's Forge at home.
Yeah.
Their next 3 home games are all against teams in the top half. So those are vital points that they need to get. They also face Pacific twice in September before closing out the last few games away against Valour and Ottawa, which will be tough, and at home against Vancouver and York as well. So the biggest thing is obviously their away form, because at home they do really well, but their away form, like this away trip that they had in Calgary, in Calgary, in Hamilton, and in Winnipeg has been abysmal, to say the least. And they cannot allow themselves to keep having these poor away performances, even when they weren't so poor. I mean, that game against like Halifax and the game against Valour, they weren't necessarily bad. They had good periods during it. They just couldn't get it across the line. The 2 games against Forge, they got blown out. They got dominated in both of those games. Like, it was night and day in those games. But they need to improve when the games that are more winnable, actually going on and winning them, and in the games that maybe aren't winnable, being a little bit more pragmatic and trying to get some some draws here and there against the top sides, because every point matters at this point in the season.
Yeah, definitely.
Every point matters at this point in the season. So we'll see if that is the case, if that's the way that Halifax go. I don't know how pragmatic Patrice Geyser will be. I feel like it's his way or his way. He only knows to play one way. So we'll see what happens with them. But this is going to be a very interesting time for Halifax, and to see if they can pull off the miracle and slide back into those playoff places.
Well, let's hope they improve, but let's hope they don't take Valor's spot in the playoffs. Come on, Valor have got to get that this year.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's true. You're wishing them better, but not that much.
Not too.
Very fair. Very fair. But that is it for this week's episode and for the end of our catch-up series. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, we appreciate all the support and the patience that you've had for us lately. As I mentioned before in the last episode, we're going to try our very best to be consistently back to making these episodes all the way up until the playoffs and beyond. And we'll hopefully have some surprises for you along the way as well. But until then, make sure to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC to let us know what you thought on this catch-up series. If you agree with our takes, if you disagree with our takes, we would love to hear from you and know. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.